that are good for the ecosystem and not for the middleman within it, which is like another thing, I think, which is very important about blockchain. So for example, you can come up with an exchange within which you're going to put the token that does work, let's say, as Binance token or something to pay the commissions. And you can actually give this token such functionality that would incentivize the liquidity provision of the exchange, which is kind of cool, which the Ethernex is currently doing. This is also a very, very important aspect. So you can now come up with all kinds of applications within which you're gonna design in a way that was not possible before. So that's the second thing which is like important about it. And and the third thing is probably in order to be able to distinguish those that strive in one of that's going to become actually good in the future. In order to distinguish them, you have to look at the applicability. And I'm going to give you an example from Sp8de. Originally, Sp8de was kind of thought of as a protocol on which you're going to be able to provide a toolbox to anybody who is willing to contribute to create their own DApps and to give to create an ecosystem in which you're going to give a token that would incentivize them to do so, and which is going to be cheaper than anything else in terms of transaction costs, simply because there is no middleman that takes the cut. So this kind of freedom for anybody to create anything where only your imagination is the limit is unfortunately completely not practical, in a sense that it's just impossible to implement right now, and probably not going to be possible in fact. And in order to see an example of how of what happens when you actually go too much for this kind of ideals of decentralization and stuff like this instead of for some practical use, you could take a look at DAO Casino. Anybody knows this project? DAO.casino.
Casino?
DAO.
DAO, decentralized.
No? It
No.
was like one of the first ICOs in the gambling, who have also when you read their white paper, you see that the guys are visionaries indeed, so it's beautiful, the way they break down the gambling industry and kind of recreate an ecosystem which would kind of mimic the same functionality and do so for much cheaper, and that makes much more sense, it's beautiful. But they're kind of well known in the industry for screwing up everything for a continuous time period, and basically by now having absolutely nothing, very populated GitHub, a lot of contributions, no practical use, absolutely no utility. So why would I, just as a regular user, prefer, let's say, DAO.casino over the PokerStars? What would make me because PokerStars does not really withhold money. Really, they kind of transfer it quite quickly. I can use $1, which is quite stable currency, and I'm used to it, and it does not fluctuate like this. So I can, when I'm betting, I know that I'm getting exposure only to the risk of not winning, but not to the risk that I won, and the price of the token actually fell 50%.
Yeah.
So it's quick. The transactions from the card into the card, in case if you're in Europe or in the US, are very quick. It has 0 fees. The PokerStars take it on themselves. It has fast, very good design, huge marketing budget, a lot of people playing it. So why would I prefer this over the DAO.casino? So that's exactly this question towards the fundamental value that the blockchain has or has not. What happens when you apply the blockchain to everything, and instead of those areas where it actually does make sense. So that's kind of I was on this Macau conference, gambling one, and there was also the TrueFlip guys. TrueFlip is also one of the earliest pioneers of blockchain gambling. Good guys, good team, proper coders, good marketing, everything is good. So I was witness to a kind of conversation between the chief marketing, I think, officer of TrueFlip and some guys who provide the backend. I think it was Playtech. Let's say it was a Playtech. So kind of this marketing officer comes to them and says, okay, I'm the chief marketing officer of TrueFlip, one of those kind of exclusively famous and proper blockchain gambling projects. So we have everything is very decentralized. So we have all the protocol for normal lottery, let's say, implemented entirely on the blockchain. So this guy's from Playtech. cool, good job, you know, okay. Like that, it's decentralized. Okay, okay, cool. So, like, and the conversation does not really evolve because one of the guys kind of have nothing to offer, and the other guys know that they can spend in a month. Their marketing budget is like 3 times whatever these guys have collected during this ICO. So, what kind of competition can there be if I can spend 3 times your entire like asset base in a month of marketing, and you cannot? And your protocol is also like, you know, inherits all those problems of volatile token, inability to process the transactions quick enough, huge cost of transactions, and everything else. And also it has to do with gambling and crypto. Both of these things, like you like have, normally in the society, I think people perceive like this blockchain is something like bubble, you know, something like this crypto. You know, so basically it inherits all of those things, and they have absolutely nothing to offer, so how can they compete? And that's exactly like, now given the time an investor, why would I invest in, let's say, Casino, something like this, apart from me speculating in their token, if, you know, I'm witnessing the situation?
Oh, well, before we get into that question, I have a question for you, Misha. What spurred you and your team to start, Sp8de, and what was the vision behind that? And then maybe, you know, the roadmap, right? Because as you're talking about blockchain and the value of blockchain, right? Because Sp8de is, you know, a very hot, cool ICO. A lot of people jumped on it, speculating that, you know, this is going to be this decentralized, you know, gaming blockchain, right? And that was very exciting for a lot of people. So if you can kind of touch upon like the beginnings, right? Your vision, and then the value of that, and you know.
Answering your question is gonna seem like, you know, all this kind of time which I was speaking, I was just pumping my project. So like,
but it's okay. This is your time. This is our time.
Okay, so basically exactly like this experience in Macau, you know, it even flows in the line of story.
Yeah.
So like, exactly this experience in Macau made me kind of see that a lot of problems that we were perceiving as, you know, as transcending, like, you know, gonna kind of pass, or like we're not gonna be so much important, or some to which we're gonna find a needed solution. All those problems are actually fundamental, and they, you know, they all have to do with one and the same problem of people confusing the blockchain as the funding mechanism and blockchain as actually some kind of a disruptive technology. Because people, you know, quick background, just, I remember about Sp8de, I'm gonna like come to. So like, I was studying in Netherlands, and in Netherlands I was in Utrecht University. Utrecht University has a very good, like, something like an accelerator. So they have a very good biological department. So they have a lot of patents, like a lot of patients, so like it's a very good university in terms of biology. And they have, like, you know, some talented students on a biology track of biology. They're being like observed, and somewhere by the end of masters they're being invited to this accelerator. In this accelerator they're being paid some minimum salary and given complete freedom in terms of like coming up with their like cool innovative product, you know, and something like this. So these people, after 3 years of development and after 3 years of indeed very hard work, they're coming to whoever there is who is running this accelerator and saying, okay guys, kind of the product is ready, everything is ready, the team is like superb, you know, we're kind of almost like Nobel Prize laureates or something like this, you know, and so now we need the funding. And the guys are there saying, well, you know, if you need the funding, you go to the European Commission and you ask them for the grant or something. So these guys are going to the European Commission for a grant to apply for it. They're standing there in huge queues, and in the end, after, I don't know, 1 year of some fruitless email conversation, they get 100K, you know. And now these guys, who spent 3 years of their most productive lifetime and actually have a product, and this product actually does bring some value, they're looking at the people who are collecting money using the blockchain, like whereby you have just a website, which is built according to the same templates over and over again. You're having the same kind of standardized backend that does allow you to accept the ether, and probably it does indeed like work. This part normally does work. No product, and a document which is being called white paper, where like frequently with poor English, people are describing how they're gonna become second Google, or better than Google, or something like this. And they're collecting $20 million in a matter of weeks. Imagine how kind of, how painful that is. So, and then afterwards, of course, they don't develop anything, they just go to Ibiza and that's it. So, the thing is that the funding mechanism, what the blockchain kind of brought into the fundraising space, is one thing. The second thing is already all these kind of revolutionary blockchain-based technologies. So in order to be just raising these funds without any kind of problems, you gotta create the token which would qualify as a utility token. Basically, in where you would state that this token has some kind of a fundamental application within your software that does allow basically people to kind of use it for some application apart from receiving the dividends. So it's not like really a security, but it's really like a some kind of a limited software license, something like this. So the thing is that if you're issuing a security which allows you to detach completely the blockchain as a technology from blockchain as technology for fundraising, then you have to go to the Securities and Exchange Commission or some other body like this. And do you want to do it? No. So that's why people who want to raise money right now, they are coming up with all kinds of stupid applications of blockchain to be able to create a token that does act as something like blood cells within their protocol in order to actually kind of be able to prove that this is a utility, not a security. And most of the times that doesn't make sense. So.
So why does Sp8de make sense?
So coming to Sp8de, basically, I would say that we can claim that we indeed created a system within which blockchain does make sense. In today's space, that's a lot, really. So,
okay.
The random number generation itself, which was the original idea, so to be able to create the unbiased, mathematically processed and cryptographically secure protocol for fair random number generation, basically, and transparent. This thing itself, just a basic functionality would be like this: you as a user come, let's say, open some gambling site, let's say poker or something like this. You get a card from the deck, and then you can actually see somehow that whoever kind of gave you this card could not have manipulated the way this card was kind of chosen out of the deck. So therefore, you need some kind of a distributed database within which a couple of nodes are participating in generating this randomness, and none of these nodes can actually influence the end result. So here the timestamping itself does not matter. And that's kind of, that's one of the very important things. So kind of you do not need a blockchain for this. You need an IPFS. IPFS would suffice really, because it doesn't matter if this random number was generated after this one or before it or whatever. You just need to know when it was generated, and that's it. I mean, when it is generated, you need to know that it was generated. That's it. So given this, you can actually create Sp8de, the original idea of distributed random number generation, as a IPFS product. But at the same time, there needs to be some kind of a way to monetize the tokens. Because just saying that, guys, we're just gonna basically do it as a security now, didn't work out, so let's do it as security. That wouldn't work really. And also, that would be against the spirit. So that's why we're using an IPFS-based technology that allows us to generate and store the random numbers. And then we're using the hash of a tree of these random numbers in order to attach it to the blockchain. Ethereum, EOS, Bitcoin, doesn't matter really. Any of them will do. And then the blockchain itself is being used to kind of to allow to use this kind of IPFS-based solution only in case if you're paying with the tokens. So in this sense now, it actually does incentivize the nodes to be participating in generating the random number, which is already kind of cool, because now anybody in the world can basically set up soon will be able to set up a node in which they will be participating in the generation of the randomness, and their, let's say, casino is just one node. So 1 out of 90, okay? Even though even one fair node is sufficient to make the thing unmanipulable. And they will be receiving the tokens for doing so. And the casinos themselves, for whom this solution does give a very good marketing perspective first and foremost, because like any random number generation will suffice for a casino. Nobody really cares. But now they can write on their website that our randomness is like truly random, which gives some kind of an edge probably. Well, actually it does. So, and in order to be able to do so, they gotta pay, and the only way for them to pay is using our token. And that's exactly the way how like a very, very, very basic system of setting this economic consent doesn't incentivize people to participate in generation of randomness, making it like completely impossible to manipulate. And at the same time, the access to this is being like paid for by the casinos for getting the marketing edge by using it. So kind of like everybody is better off, and it does make sense.